Hello, my name is Adepeju Oshisanya and I'm the Director for Program Management at Benevolent AI. It's a pleasure to join you today to talk to you about inclusive trial design. Benevolent AI is an artificial intelligence company founded in 2013. We're located in London and we utilize our artificial intelligence platform in drug discovery. Why inclusion and diversity in research is important? This is a question that I am sure all of us as researchers have found ourselves asking in the last few years. And it is evident from various publications and news reports that research is not as inclusive as it should be, from the lack of inclusion of elderly population to the lack of balance between the sexes in research. Again, we are fully aware that we need to do better as researchers in terms of who we include in our research in order to ensure that the outcome of the research is applicable and beneficial to all. The reasons for the need for better inclusion has been documented, and we know that it is driven by both intrinsic and extrinsic factors, and those factors come together to affect us as different parts of the population in terms of how diseases affect us and how drugs help in alleviating symptoms of diseases or even treating those diseases. Intrinsic factors could include body weight, genetics, and even profiles of determinants like allele frequencies. Extrinsic factors also drive the way disease affects us and drug affect us, which include diet, our cultural attitudes, environmental factors, and the risks that we are exposed to. But with that, and knowing from a scientific perspective that inclusion of diverse population is critical to the research we do, we find that research it's not inclusive. From looking at bench to clinic, there is great disparity in terms of who is included in research. And this publication in the scientific report that looked at the analysis of racial and ethnic representation in applied cancer research actually lays to bear what is really happening under the surface in research. When you look at cell line models, it is known that majority of the origin of the cell lines that we use in drug discovery are of white origin. Genomics is a well-publicized problem whereby genomics is majority of the contributors to genomic database and biobanks are also of white origin. And in clinical trials, one of the biggest problem we have is, one, we don't always collect information around ethnicity as an example. But when we do, again, majority of our participants are white and male, of European and North American ancestry. So the problem is there. We're clear that it's there, and the question is, what do we need to do about it? Also, the Genomic-Wide Association studies between 2017 and 2007 and 2017 has shown that they are improving the contribution of various ethnic groups into the GWAS program, but again, it's still dominated by Europeans. So the NIHR recognizing the ongoing challenge of inclusion of underserved groups in clinical trials, they set up the Include project, which is really set up to ensure that health research includes people who most need it, and that researchers have the right tools to assist them in ensuring that they are including underserved group in their research. And one of the strongest points of the NIHR Include program is that they really help researchers to understand where we've been going wrong and give tools as to how we can do better. And they've defined who the underserved communities are, because again, it's I always say it's not only about ethnicity. Examples include older people of older age group, women of childbearing potential are notoriously excluded from research because of, yes, we have seen in the past issues with drug research and unborn babies, but obviously as we are improving and increasing our ability around contraception, again, this population can be included in research. We also find that people who are educationally disadvantaged, who are perhaps illiterate, are being excluded from research. People living in remote areas, socially marginalized population, and patients with, cognitive impairments or even learning disabilities, to pregnant women, you name it, those underserved group are missing out. And these are the same people who will take the medicines when they get to the market, or who we expect to be beneficiaries of the outcome of our research. So being able to have a roadmap and a framework that actually helps researchers to think about how we would include these underserved groups in our research is very important. And in early 2020, just before the pandemic hit, I got an opportunity to be part of a workshop which actually focused solely on the ethnicity aspect of the Include framework. And the Include ethnicity framework really aims to help trial teams to think carefully about which ethnic groups should be included in their trial for the results to be widely applicable. And also, think about what challenges there may be to making this possible. We know that in most cases, the research team look very different to the population, and in not wanting to offend different ethnic groups, there might be a reluctance or hesitance to actually asking certain questions. So having identified potential challenges around, what kind of, which ethnicity should be included in the research, the trial team can then consider ways in which they can reduce those challenges. For this work to work best, the framework needs to be used at the trial design stage before funding is in place, so that the researchers have really thought through about what they need to include. So what is it? The Include ethnicity framework is in two parts. Part one actually asks 4 fundamental questions that all researchers should be asking before they embark on a clinical research. And then the second is a number of worksheets that actually help them to complete questions that enable them to design their clinical trials appropriately. So the first part looks at questions like, who should my trial results apply to? So which groups in the community could benefit from the intervention if it was to be found effective, or even benefit from not having it if we found the intervention to be ineffective? Second question, are the groups identified, are they likely to respond to the treatment in a different way? Well, researchers need to be thinking about how might the disease or the cultural factors mean that some groups in the community respond to or engage with the treatment in a different way. So again, we are not all going to be reacting the same way, as I mentioned earlier on, due to intrinsic or extrinsic factors, and really understanding it about our local population is important as we conduct research. The next question asks, will my trial intervention or comparator make it harder for any groups identified to engage with the intervention or comparator? how might the intervention that we're studying or comparator, including how they are provided, make it harder for some groups in the community to take part? And in this one, we ask people to think about, timing of clinical research, the delivery of the clinical research. If you run your trial between 9 and 12 or 9 and 5, only those who can really take time off work can come. How do we compensate people for loss of earnings? And the final question, will the trial design make it hard for some people to be involved? So how might elements of my trial, such as eligibility criteria or the recruitment or consent process, make it harder for some groups in the community to take part? And these 4 questions are fundamental, really drilling down into ensuring that patients of different ethnicity can be truly considered for research. Once researchers have been able to answer those questions for their study, then we have worksheets that actually breaks down the additional investigations that researchers have to conduct. So, for instance, worksheets. The worksheets are intended to be used by the trial team in partnership with, for example, the patient and public partners, to ensure that ethnic group involvement is considered clearly at the very early stage of their trials. And the questions in the worksheet also link very clearly to the INCLUDE framework, those key questions from the INCLUDE framework. So the worksheet may cover issues that some trial teams, already think about. The intention really is that the worksheet will help to highlight issues consistently across trials for all teams, as well as raising some questions that may not have routinely been considered at present. So worksheet 1 actually focuses on disease and cultural factors that might influence the effect of treatment on some ethnic groups. So, for instance, the disease, how might the prevalence of the disease vary between each ethnic group or the target population? How might the cultural practices, beliefs, and traditions influence the acceptability and adherence of the treatment in the research? And how or when might people in each ethnic group access healthcare for disease differently? And these questions are really important because, again, without understanding what factors differentiate different ethnic groups, researchers are not able to really take those into consideration and ensure that they have thought it through and accommodated for them in their research. The second worksheet actually asks the question, what, who, how, where, and when. So, the what, looking at how might the intervention and comparator limit participation in the trial. The who, how might the person delivering the intervention limit participation of people from each ethnic group in the target population. And how might the mode of delivery, either through telephone, video call, face-to-face, in groups, limit the participation of people from each of the ethnic groups in the target population. The where is also important because where the intervention is delivered, for instance, in hospitals, general practice, local library, you name it, may limit participation of certain groups of people from each ethnic groups that is within the target population. So those are really important considerations that needs to be included. Further on, the worksheets also deal with looking at eligibility criteria, how the opportunity to participate in the research is considered, the consent process that is being employed in the trial, thinking about how we retain patients, the benefits, harms, and how we go about data analysis for the research. So some key points is that we know that for phase 3 trials, trial population should generally look like the community population so that the results can be applicable to them. But we know that oversampling of some groups based on prevalence and severity could be a consideration, and the interventions themselves may be problematic for some groups. So recruitment is often down to recruiter discretion, which is likely to be a disadvantage for some groups. So again, we challenge research teams to really think about, the kind of biases, unknown biases, that they may be bringing into their research as they're designing and preparing for them. And the way we communicate with potential trial participants is critical. So it's not only about writing our patient information leaflets, but are they good materials? Are they engaging materials? Are they translated and presented in the right format? And how are we leveraging available, social media and new technologies to ensure that we're actually reaching the right population for our trials? As always, with this very quick talk about the importance of including diverse population in research, a call to action for all researchers is to understand and know why many trials are not ethnically diverse as they should be. And also recording ethnicity as we run research needs to be routine, as we normally do for age and sex. And the NIHR Include framework is there to help us not only think about ethnicity, but other underserved communities, underserved groups that we may currently be excluding in our research. The ethnicity framework provides practical tools to actually enable researchers to think through for their clinical research in terms of how to better the inclusion of ethnic groups, and how to effectively engage minority ethnic groups, individuals in trials, really will be that next challenge. And we are already aware of examples, especially around COVID trials, where a lot of effort has been put into engaging with these communities. But again, a lot more work is there for us to do. So thank you for your time today, and I'd be happy to take any questions.